This is the new 2023 Cadillac Lyriq, and it's Cadillac's latest luxury SUV. With one big difference from all of Cadillac's other luxury SUVs, this is Cadillac's first fully electric vehicle. The Lyriq starts around $62,000. It has over 300 miles of electric driving range, and it has 340 horsepower. And today, I'm going to review the Lyriq and show you all of its quirks and features. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website for cool cars from the modern era with free listings. You can list your cool car for free and auction it on Cars and Bids. And we've had some fantastic sales recently, including this wonderful BMW M4 Competition sold for $64,500. This Ford F-150 Lightning sold for over $101,000, and this fantastic BMW M5 brought over $41,000. If you're looking to buy or sell a cool enthusiast car from the modern era, the 1980s and up, Cars and Bids is the place to do it. With daily auctions and great selection and free listings, check it out at carsandbids.com. All right, I'm going to start the quirks and features of the Lyriq with getting in, where you have some rather odd items, starting with this, which looks like a door handle. It's shaped like a door handle, but actually it's a door pusher. I say that because to get inside, you don't grab this, you push it, and then the door is presented to you and you open it up. Take another look. You push on this, the door pops open, and then you open it up the rest of the way. In case you're curious how this works, it's pretty interesting. When you push the door open, a little electronic post inside the door pushes itself out, and that's what pushes the door towards you so that you can grab it. Once you open the door more, the little electronic post retreats back into the door so you can't see it at all. Take another look. You open the door, the electronic post pops the door out, then you open it the rest of the way, and it slides back into the door. Certainly rather unusual. And up front, there's another part to all this. You have a little door handle that's integrated into the window trim, as you can see. Pop the door open, and then you can grab the door handle to make it easier to open up the door after it's been presented to you. All rather strange. And we're not done with the weird openers yet. No. Next, you have the charge port door, which is integrated here into the front fender on the driver's side. To open up this, you press the Cadillac logo in the upper right corner of the door, you tap on it, and then it opens up. Not incredibly gracefully, but it does. That's where you can plug in your charger and charge up the electric Lyriq. To close this door, you tap on the little black rectangle in the corner where the Cadillac logo was, and then it closes right up, and that's how you access your charge port door. And another weird opener is the one for the tailgate in back. You don't have a little popper or a handle above the license plate like in most vehicles. Instead, to open the tailgate, you push the Cadillac logo. Press it, that's your popper, and then the tailgate pops open and you get into the cargo area. Take another look, push the Cadillac logo, and it pops right up, which is actually a pretty cool integration. And since I'm back here, let's talk about another very interesting quirk around the back of the Lyriq, and that would be the rear lighting, which is bizarre. For one thing, the brake lights. This is what they look like when they're on. Two vertical bars at the extreme edges of the car, and then the third brake light is also two more vertical bars at the center above the rear window. Very strange, certainly different from everything else, but not as weird as the turn signals, which are on now. You can see they're huge. On the side of the car, they sweep across and go basically down the entire rear side. And as you pull out, you can see the brake lights also become turn signals when the turn signals are on, so the whole turn signal situation is massive. This has to be the single largest amount of surface area devoted to turn signals in the entire car business. They are huge, just to let people know you're making a lane change. And then there's the shape back here, which is also unusual. You have the lighting on the side, as I showed you before, which is weird, and then you have the tailgate above that, but there's a piece of painted bodywork in between, which is just unusual. You don't see that in any other car. The lighting coming down below the tailgate opening and leaving a hole for bodywork. It is so odd. You don't really see that in any other car. And I don't want to say it's ugly, but it's certainly different. But then we move back to the subject of lighting and we move up front, where you take a look at the front end and you see that the headlights don't really appear to exist. The turn signals are mounted in this horizontal piece where you'd normally expect to find headlights. So where are the lights up front? They are once again arranged in a very distinctive vertical strip on the sides of the car, just like the brake lights in back. This is your headlight, these little LED bricks at the very edges arranged vertically. Very strange and very different from everything else. And to make things even more unusual, the grille also lights up. An electric car doesn't need a grille because an electric motor doesn't need air blowing on it to keep it cool, so automakers can do weird stuff with grills, and Cadillac certainly has. When it's not lit up, you can see it's this black plastic with kind of an unusual striped design, but when it is lit up, it looks like this. Again, a very distinctive kind of signature lighting look that helps differentiate the Lyriq from basically any other car on the road. Vertical headlights and a light up grille. But anyway, next we move inside the Lyriq, where I must say I love the door sill. It says Cadillac, but it also has this cool side view image of the Lyriq to let you know you're getting into something a little different. I also like the trim on the inside of the door. You can see this beautiful wood that sort of fades into this cool triangular pattern. It's sort of like old-fashioned becoming modern, and I think it looks pretty cool. And I also like the interior door handle, which is this beautiful brushed aluminum piece. You lift it up, feels good, looks good, and that's how you get out of your Lyriq. But anyway, once you get inside, one of the first things you notice in here is it's really nice. Very beautiful interior, gorgeous, great materials everywhere, a lot of aluminum, a lot of leather, nice stitching. Everything looks really nice and high quality in this car. It looks like the luxury SUV that it is. I especially like that Cadillac has finally changed their stalks coming off the steering column. Instead of the horrible old ones that I complained about in the Cadillac Escalade, you can see them here, you now have these classy new ones that are actually fitting what you'd expect from a luxury car, not just some parts bin piece left over from a Chevrolet. A lot of nice features in this interior, but probably the most obvious thing you notice when you climb inside is the giant curved screen that goes from the left of the steering wheel on the driver's side all the way over to the center in the middle of the interior. This is a 33-inch screen, and it has a wide variety of functions, as you can imagine. In the center, you have a touch screen, which functions quite well. It's very responsive to your touch. It does exactly what you'd expect. I really like the home screen, which is configurable, and you can see it's displaying right now music on one side and maps on the other, although it's a Google sign-in screen because it'll show you Google Maps as opposed to some car navigation system, which I think is a pretty nice touch. Google Maps integrated into the screen. But aside from that, very easy to use, very intuitive, simple screen, and climate controls aren't integrated into the screen. They have their own dedicated buttons and switches below, so you don't have to go into any menus or settings to adjust your climate control, which most people prefer. Now, with that said, as much as I love this screen setup, it does maybe a little bit too much. For example, the glove box opening is controlled through the screen. There's a little icon here, you push it, and then the glove box opens up. I don't know what's wrong with a simple glove box latch, but that would probably be easier. Now, moving on from the center screen, there's still a lot more screen to cover, and maybe the most interesting part is over to the left of the gauge cluster, where you have yet another touch screen. Over here, you have several different items that you can control as the driver. For example, your headlight control is over here, as you can see. You also have your trip odometer control over here, so you can cycle through various trip odometers. And you can use this touchscreen to configure exactly what's being shown on the main driver gauge cluster. You can see right now it's showing gauges because that's what I've selected, but you can also have it showing a map if that's what you want to see, a full screen map directly in your line of sight, which is pretty cool. And you can even have it show something called clean, which is basically a stripped down screen that only shows what you need to see and nothing extra. In case you're overwhelmed by all the information coming at you on the screens, go to clean, and then it becomes very simple. You have a speedometer and not much else. So various different choices there. Now, also in this vicinity, sticking up from the center of the steering column, you have this, which is the sensor for Cadillac Super Cruise, their cruise controlled driver assist technology. In the past, I've used Super Cruise and I found it to be fantastic. As long as you keep your eyes forward, the car will do all steering, braking, accelerating, even lane changing for you. It's a really good system, although in this particular car, I couldn't get it activated. I tried repeatedly on the 5 freeway, which is a very popular freeway, unquestionably mapped in Cadillac's Super Cruise universe, and it just wouldn't turn on, which is one of my big complaints with systems like this. There are so many different variables that have to be perfect for them to work, and it gets a little bit annoying. Never could use Super Cruise in the Lyriq, although I did use the regular adaptive cruise control, which worked perfectly. Now, beyond all the technology in this interior, there are quite a few interesting quirks and features worth covering. Like, for example, this little cubby that comes out of the center console and it's blue. As you can see, the inside of the cubby is entirely blue, which is a little unorthodox, doesn't match anything else in this interior, but it is. Actually, I take that back, it does match this, the bottom of the center console, which is also blue, but that's it. It's just those two things that are blue and an otherwise black, white, silver interior. Kind of strange, but it adds a little character. Next up, another interesting item in this interior. In the center console, you can see a few controls. These will control the center screen. If you don't want to use it as a touch screen, you'd rather use controls with your hands, you can do that here in the center. You got a home screen, a back button, music to pull up music, etc. You also have a volume dial. You can run your finger up and down to change the volume, and below all that, you have a Cadillac logo and a circle, which you can use to select various items on the menu and scroll around in your center touchscreen. Some auxiliary controls there. Next up, certainly an interesting quirk in this interior is the center climate vent situation. You control it with this little switch here in the middle, as you can see, and it controls this entire massive center climate vent. You can adjust up, down, around, and you can see it moving as you move the switch. A little unorthodox, kind of strange, and actually all of the climate vents are controlled this way. The passenger has two dedicated ones on their side of the dashboard, and the driver has that giant center one and also another on the other side of the steering wheel, and they all move around with these little switches up, down. It's all a little bit weird and unorthodox, but that's how it works in this car. And next up, another nice benefit of the Lyriq is it comes standard with a 19 speaker sound system. Speakers are everywhere, including in the headrest on the driver and passenger seats in front. You can see speakers on either side of your head projecting music right into your ear for a perfect sound listening experience. Also worth mentioning in this interior, something pretty cool is the sunroof situation. You open up the sunshade and you can see this massive glass panel that goes above basically the entire interior. And unlike in a lot of cars with a panel like this, there's no crossbar in the center. It's just one giant piece of glass so you can look up front or back and see the world. The only drawback is with no crossbar, that means it's not split in half, so there's no panel that can open. So this glass piece is fixed in place, but you do get a great view out. Also worth pointing out with the Lyriq, you do have a start-stop button, which you can see here. You get in and you have to press that to turn it on. I mention this because a lot of modern EVs don't have that. You just get in, shift into gear, and drive away, but the Lyriq does have a power button. And next up, we move on to the back of the Lyriq, which is surprisingly large. I say that because there really is a lot of legroom, knee room, headroom. It's a large back seat for the Lyriq, especially for a vehicle of its size. Lyriq's about 196 inches long, which makes it a little longer than most mid-sized luxury SUVs, about 2 inches longer than a BMW X5 and roughly 4 inches longer than a Lexus RX, but it feels a lot bigger than that back here compared to the rear seat room in those models. Now, aside from that, not a whole lot going on back here, although it's worth pointing out you do have incredibly small versions of those little climate control adjusters that you had up front for the back seats, which just look cute, and you also have directly below that some charge ports, 2 USB-C, which is nice, plus a household charge port, which is great to have in an interior. You can plug in a laptop or a blender or whatever it is you want inside your Lyriq. And next up, we move on to the cargo area in the Lyriq, and you can see the floor space back here is pretty large. Again, fairly large for a mid-size SUV like this, although it's worth pointing out that that sloped roof design will steal some space if you want to load in taller items. It might be a little limited because of the sloping design of the Lyriq, but it's still pretty big back here. And in case you want even more space, there's a handle on the floor in the cargo areas you can see. Lift that up, and there's a little additional trunk back here, which is actually pretty large, where you can store even more stuff, or maybe fragile items if you don't want them rolling around in the entire cargo area. Now, one other nice benefit of the Lyriq in the cargo area is you can drop the rear seats. You got buttons over here you can press, and then the seats will go down. Worth pointing out, this is not power folding, meaning you can't press the button the other direction and have the seats come back up. You don't have that, but you do have the ability to drop the seats from back here, which adds some convenience to the Lyriq. And finally, we move up front in the Lyriq, where you have no storage at all. It looks like you have have storage up here because you open this hood and you can see a giant center panel with a Cadillac logo on it. You figure if you lift that up, there'll be storage underneath, but there's not. You can see it's mechanical stuff under there, meaning there's no front storage at all. Now, this is a drawback for some people, although automakers continue to tell me that their studies and focus groups show that most people never use their front trunk storage in an EV, but it's still nice to have it there in case you need a little extra spot to put something. But since I'm up here, let's talk powertrain. Right now, the Lyriq is only offered in one way, rear-wheel drive with 340 horsepower. That's this. But Cadillac says an all-wheel drive model will soon join the lineup with 500 horsepower, which would be a pretty significant boost, plus the practicality of all-wheel drive. Now, Cadillac says the rear-wheel drive Lyriq starts around $62,000, but interestingly, the all-wheel drive version will start around $65,000, which seems like a pretty small price increase to add a lot of power and all-wheel drive, and I suspect most people will probably upgrade to the all-wheel drive version. As for electric range, the EPA says about 312 miles of pure electric driving with this version. The all-wheel drive model, which comes out in like a year, hasn't yet been rated, but figure its range will probably be a little less than the rear-wheel drive. Now, as for performance, even the 340 horsepower rear-wheel drive version is pretty quick. Cadillac says high 5-second range 0 to 60, which is reasonable, and of course the all-wheel drive model will surely be a lot faster than that. And speaking of speed, the Lyriq is DC fast charging capable, which means it can add range back pretty quickly if you find the right charger. Cadillac says 195 miles of range can be added in 30 minutes, which is pretty good and can get you going even if you are out of juice. As for pricing compared to rivals, the closest rivals are the BMW iX, which starts around $85,000, and the Audi e-tron, which starts around $72,000. This, at around $62,000, really seems like a bargain compared to those, especially because the e-tron's range is just not all that great. This is far better, and I suspect it's going to stack up as a pretty good value against its luxury EV rivals. And Cadillac says the Lyriq will go on sale this fall. In fact, it might already be in dealers since it is already this fall. All right, driving the Cadillac Lyriq. I have been looking forward to this for quite a while. Cadillac has been previewing this car and talking about this car for a while, and I've been very eager to check it out. Interesting strategy debuting with the base model. Most other EVs have been revealed and gone on sale with the best model first, and then it kind of trickles down to the base model because that's where more profit is. But Cadillac has launched with sort of the entry-level rear-wheel drive version, and the all-wheel drive, more powerful one is coming next year. By the way, also worth pointing out, the Lyriq is only offered with 2-row seating, so front and rear, there's no third row in these. All right, so how does the Lyriq drive? First impression is very smooth. It's a very smooth and comfortable and luxurious luxury EV, which is important to point out because a lot of EVs, especially high-end ones, have gone in more of a performance-y, sporty type direction, which is just generally true of a lot of cars these days, EV or not. And this one, though, really hasn't. For one thing, it's not that fast. 0 to 60 in 5.8, flooring it right now. It's quick, but it's not like amazing, and it's certainly not like some electric cars, which really will blow you back and smash your face back in the seat. It's just like enough that it's fine. But the more luxurious kind of ride quality experience is what's more impressive here. Very quiet in here. You don't hear much. You don't feel much. It's very nice and very comfortable. And dare I say, one of the more luxurious and calm and comfortable EVs I've yet driven. And of course, that's paired with a very nice interior. It really is. Cadillac interiors over the last few years have gotten better and better and better, but even some of the more recent ones, there have been some obvious drawbacks, like some turn signal stocks that don't look right, like some crappy plastic here and there. Not this car. This car really looks nice on every surface, everywhere to touch, everywhere to look. It's a very beautiful interior here, and frankly, it looks nicer than it should at this price point. Now, sitting here, you do feel like you're kind of setting up like you want to in an SUV. Or a crossover. It feels good, it feels nice. Not quite as high as like an Escalade or something like that, but definitely higher than a Model 3 or some other electric crossover. It feels good in here. Visibility is very good. Despite the kind of sloping rear roofline and no real windows back there, you get your mirror camera like a lot of cars now have. You have decently sized side mirrors. You get a pretty good idea of what's going on around you. Now, as for like steering and handling, the term to describe this car would be predictable. It's easy, it drives as you'd expect, nothing crazy, nothing too exciting, just fine. You don't have amazingly precise steering feel or incredibly quick steering action. It's just not quite like that in this car, but you're not expecting it to. It's a Cadillac luxury SUV. It's not aimed to be sporty, and it drives fine. Honestly, it drives like any other luxury SUV. It just happens to be electric. And I think that's something really nice about it. I think that's something a lot of people are going to want. People don't necessarily want to make weird compromises or get some bizarre vehicle to go electric. They just want what they're used to, the Lexus RX or the Mercedes GLE that they're used to, but electric. And that's this, and it does a good job pulling it off. It's a good luxury SUV, and also it happens to be electric. And so that's the new 2023 Cadillac Lyriq. This is a nice luxury SUV. It's beautiful, it's got great tech, and it brings electric to the Cadillac lineup. And now it's time to give the new Lyriq a DOUGSCORE. And the DOUGSCORE is here, 62 out of 100, which places the Lyriq here against rival EV SUVs. The Lyriq looks like it scores pretty low, but really the number to pay attention to here is the daily score. The Lyriq has a 38 out of 50, which beats or ties every other car on this list. It just falls short in the weekend scores because, frankly, the Lyriq isn't sporty or even pretending to be sporty. It's comfortable, luxurious, high-tech, gorgeous inside, a great relaxed cruiser, but if performance or fun is what you're looking for, well, look elsewhere.